Okay, quick disclaimer before we get started. The Blockmates podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. The information and opinions expressed on the podcast are those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Blockmates or its affiliates. Listeners are encouraged to do their own research and consult with a financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Blockmates and its affiliates are not liable for any losses or damages incurred as a result of the reliance on the information or opinions expressed on this podcast. Right, that looks like it's working. We're back. We've got Magnus and Chris from Protectorate. This has been coming a while. We've seen this coming down the pipe for quite a while now. Magnus, I remember when you were back on 8-9 months ago now, I think.
Yeah. It's almost been a year. It's crazy, man. You just came back from Token 2049, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what was that? November time. So it's come full circle now, and really happy so we can actually get into it and see what you guys have been cooking up. But how are you both doing?
Yeah, good on my end, man. It's Australia. It's a bit colder here probably than where you are, but yeah, I'm doing well overall. All things considered with the market the way it is, but yeah.
Good stuff. Chris, what about yourself?
Yeah, all good. Big week ahead of us, like getting ready to ship like the first iteration of Protectorate, but on the other side of the world as Magnus. So we've been experts at navigating each other's schedules. Given I'm closer to Miami, I'm not in the city, but like closer to there, like so geographically, like for ease, like that's all, like I end up mentioning as far as like the city. But yeah, all good nevertheless. So super stoked to be chatting today about this.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for joining us. Could you guys have picked up even worse time zones to work on a project together if you tried?
Oh man, it's the struggle is real being an Australian, but you make it work. I wouldn't have it any other way, to be honest. So
yeah, I swear 90% of the lift has been Magnus's end, like working around like schedules and stuff like that, being like from the States, because like a lot of the people that we would chat to, the farthest usually goes out towards Asia, but there's been like rare times that we've had people like in the same time zone as Magnus. But so it's been actually, believe it or not, I think it's been easier to deal with this type of time zone difference than even with say like Europe, because it's a little bit easier to plan. I think it's just, of course, like it's a push and pull, right? Like it's kind of crazy. Like Magnus has chatted it out, like super late evenings, or sometimes like on my end, it might be like later evenings for me, and then early mornings for Magnus. So like we'll hop on a team call and be like, yo, good morning. Like we just spoke like earlier in my morning. So anyway, it's been awesome. Yeah, legit. It's trippy, but it's super sick.
It comes with a territory, right?
Yeah, 100%. So can we just take a little step back and just tell us how you guys have got up to this point now with Protectorate and then maybe Protecc Labs as well, just to kind of set the scene and give like the listeners or the viewers a bit of a high level overview of what you guys have been up to. And I don't know when to start with that, maybe Magnus, and then we'll get on to Chris.
Yeah, I guess when we last spoke, I was mentioning that like myself and Chris had been basically ideating, working on like Protecc Labs, and just for giving the audience a bit more context on that, like Protecc Labs is a NFT focused market maker. So that there's that particular entity, and then what we're actually talking about, like why we reached out to talk more about this, is actually Protectorate. So Protectorate Protocol. It's a little bit of a mouthful. So, but we like altered carbon and everything, so that's where it sort of stemmed from. But the idea is basically to do a tokenized protocol and effectively like decentralize certain elements of the market making initiative towards that. NFT users aren't the most like DeFi savvy and whatnot. We want to try and provide like a simplistic platform where people can actually deposit their assets, whether that be ETH or stables, and ultimately as well like NFTs as well. And then you can make your inventory productive. So we want to try and do this in the most simplistic way possible, take the complexity out of it, all of these like terminologies that we've all come to love, especially given our backgrounds with like redacted, you got RL butterfly, V curve, and all that type of thing. So yeah, that's kind of like where we're at. And then I don't know, was there any points that I may have missed, Chris?
No, that's it. I mean, that's like the simplest way to break down the building, if you will.
So can we get into Protectorate then? I know we just scanned over it a little bit there, but
Yeah.
So what's the kind of the product in detail, and like what's the user journey look like if I'm coming to the app, and just as much or as little detail as you want to get into, and then we can kind of pick the bones off that, I suppose.
Yeah, like I think what was super interesting is like, I think one of the most interesting questions that we've received, and like we've actually like kind of, picking the brains of, not only our investors, but also now our community, has been like, what was the inspiration behind this thing, right? Magnus and I kicked off Protecc Labs like a little bit over a year ago now. So the idea was pretty much conceived in like April, May of last year. We were looking at the NFT space and in general, just the market kind of puking, and just like, amongst our work in different like protocols, like Redacted, as you know, and like other stuff that we were involved in, we were pretty much like the most avid NFT participants out of like our entire like colleagues, I guess you could say. I mean, literally the only two. Like we would have NFT focused chats, and Magnus and I would be the only two talking about it. And we've had some experience like doing treasury management stuff with some other DAOs and protocols. So, we're literally just, I'm transitioning out of working for like a hedge fund at the time. And Magnus, fortunately introduced me to Sammy at Redacted, and I was getting involved there. And really quickly, we got to this point where it's like, yo, the NFT space, like, something's happening here, right? Like something weird but cool is happening here, right? Like you have this interesting combination of like a lot of people that are sitting on a ton of like shit that they don't know what to do with. A liquid JPEG meme. Like, why don't we turn this thing on its head and actually, like flip the script, if you will, right? Like, a liquid JPEG as a meme is kind of like dead now, and nobody talks about JPEGs as a liquid anymore. It really is like crazy to see that NFTs were regarded as illiquid before, and now you don't have that. Now, who can you attribute that success to? You can name quite a few, but the idea was like, okay, there's an opportunity to do something here. Hence, Protecc Labs was born. As we began our raising process, like we really were like, yo, this space right now is fantastic and it's full of potential, tons of like potential energy, right? But where do we get this kinetic energy? Like, where do we see like, where do we set things in motion, and where do we allow people to kind of turn this really complex topic into something so simple that literally our parents can understand it in a very simple conversation, as opposed to like breaking down the Curve ecosystem and bribing and, gauges and snapshot, like. So the idea of Protectorate Protocol was born. Magnus and I literally just smashed out a light paper, and we gave it a lot of thought as to like what it would look like to really sit a layer on top of everything, right? Like it doesn't matter if something is like P2P lending for NFTs or P2 pool lending for NFTs or even AMMs for NFTs. It didn't really matter. Like we wanted to exist a layer above everything and effectively make Protectorate Protocol vertical resistant. So we look at it as the first truly vertical resistant protocol within NFT finance. And a lot of other protocols across DeFi have inspired what the final product actually looks like. Final product in terms of like stages, right? So like V0.1, now to get into the initial question, I thought the context would be helpful, but V0.1 is basically the culmination of what we think has been one of the most interesting narratives of, end of 2022 and so far 2023, which is like, where do people park their ETH? Right? Like, where can they generate sustainable yield without insane Ponzi-nomics with their ETH? So V0.1 will consist of an ETH vault. We call it the ETH capsule. That basically it's like a, like a yearn style vault where people deposit their ETH. And what Protectorate as a protocol is designed to do is effectively route this ETH to a variety of different partner protocols. We haven't yet announced the partner that we're going to be, launching with, but what we can say is that there's one so far that we've trusted and done our DD enough on to be able to route liquidity there. In terms of like, what's the scalability, like how much TVL can we garner and route to this protocol until it no longer makes sense? Security wise, like what kind of position would the protocol be in our users' fund, most importantly? And the other, I guess, piece of alpha we could leak is that it is a money market. So we will kick off with like a money market style liquidity routing system, where effectively the protocol lends against NFTs, but in a way where it takes on, pretty much close to zero risk. So that's basically the idea. We'll be able to generate ETH returns for our depositors. And yeah, some really interesting surprises for depositors. And if you've read the light paper, to our audience as well, like for token stakers as well. So yeah, I hope that answers as far as like what the initial user flow would look like. It'll be very simple, set and forget type of thing.
Yeah, awesome. Makes a lot of sense. And I suppose with how this space is kind of evolving, all I keep saying is really, really smart people wanting to build in this specific sector of NFT finance. There are also some idiots built in it, but like there's a full spectrum of people built in. But for the most part, they're pretty smart people. So what was it for both of you guys, like particularly with being kind of full time in the industry, as you said, Chris, you're kind of transitioning over from the hedge fund. What was it about like the NFT-fi sector that you kind of looked at it and thought there's a problem here that I want to solve? And I suppose the product with Protectorate is an all-encompassing layer of increasing liquidity across the sector. But what is it about this specific emergent sector that you think has got that, obviously that large potential upside there for you guys to get stuck into?
Yeah, it's I promise it's a much simpler answer than most people would probably think, and it's something that we've came to realize like time and time again. It's like ad nauseum at points, especially throughout our raise. When we were like we still do, of course, but like we studied the market super hard. We had conversations with pretty much everyone across the NFT-fi space, like literally everyone. It didn't matter if it was the newest of the new, marketplace for NFTs or the oldest of the old P2P NFT kind of like lending marketplace, right? We spoke with everyone. And the simple answer is that DeFi is boring as fuck, right? Like DeFi it's extremely complex, right? And not necessarily for us, right? Like there's a learning curve, but it's a massive learning curve. With NFTs, it's so extremely simple to wrap your head around. I simply like this image, or I simply like this community. I dig the vibes here. I will simply purchase this NFT and become, like Wolf of Wall Street style, one of us. It's literally like that cult-like mentality that's basically been monetized into this ridiculous beast that we know today as the NFT space. But up until now, there's been no unlock for all of the liquidity that's been poured into these, what were once known as illiquid JPEGs, right? So the NFT space as a whole, personally, and like I would say collectively within our entire team now, we see as having way more potential upside than even DeFi because of, something as simple and as like relevant today as NFTs to even something as, I won't say obscure, but far out right now, like real world assets and like things like homes or things like debt being tokenized on chain as NFTs, right? Like what do you do with those and what platforms do you go to unlock these types of things and like use like 721 technology to kind of like, harbor, if you will, on chain. So yeah, it's like from a really simplistic level, like it's extremely interesting because like you have this collector base and you have this active market or user base, if you will, that's like super tapped into this, but would never ever touch DeFi because they just simply don't know or don't care. Just simply want to buy NFTs. They don't care about anything else. They want to speculate, the free mints and open editions going to Valhalla or zero. And it really takes that DeFi casino mentality to a completely different level because you have the culture element. And I personally believe that no matter how hard DeFi tries to appeal to the masses, it will literally never get there. It won't get there because people don't, in general, like the common person that wants to interact and invest their money and put money somewhere, and in general, like this generation of kids today and in general people today, right? Like they simply don't care to understand finance, which is where you see most DeFi builders in terms of that side of the spectrum. They care about finance. They have experience working in financial industries in general, and just want to apply some of these strategies and take them to different levels on chain. That makes sense. There's room for DeFi, but for NFTs, like you tap into this completely different cultural audience that DeFi can never touch. But that end rant,
Yeah, that was definitely like part of the thing for us. Like NFTs have that like cultural unlock. Like, and I think the closest thing when it comes to like fungible tokens, DeFi for that matter, is all the meme coins, right? Yeah. Easy to see when you look at the Pepe runs and stuff, Sorry.
Yeah, there is something, isn't there? If DeFi, I know DeFi projects sometimes will give a lot of shit to NFT projects and like vice versa, but
yeah, vice versa,
I think like, particularly from like a community building and an onboarding perspective, DeFi protocols definitely have a lot to learn from how some of the top nft-fi projects and NFT projects work, because they just seem to be able to. I don't know if it's the end user that's different, that can get a little bit more hyped up and has a little bit more buy-in, but there's definitely something to be learned from both sides of the fence, I think. But where do you think the initial users are going to come from then on Protectorate? Do you think they're going to be more DeFi native users, or do you think you're going to have more the NFT crowd? Like, where do you think that initial user base is going to come? Or do you think, like, what weighting of each do you think you're going to kind of get, and will that change over time, do you think?
Yeah, so at the present moment, we're getting a lot of people that are actually like within those sort of two camps, like the DeFi people that to begin with, they have that like element in which they really enjoy NFTs, the enjoyers. And like they've been talking to us a lot as well, because it's like, oh sweet, like you guys are trying to provide like a DeFi experience where I can actually make my inventory productive again. So it's kind of like letting them know that we're trying to facilitate that, and then once that's effectively established, we will definitely like expand to target say NFT only people, because for the guys that actually are sort of within those two camps, people can identify that they're actually making use of this protocol, and it's like, oh, it's not just for NFTs. There is some yield that they can be generated for whatever, stables or ETH for that matter. So that's kind of how we're looking at it. And, ultimately, like you said before, trying to build up that like community, much like how an NFT project does. We're trying to sort of take that approach to like a very strong branding type of like initiative.
The branding is first class, to be fair, and the delivery of everything across the socials. It's just really, really. I wouldn't expect anything less like coming out of your account, to be fair, but it's
Thank you.
It's just nice and refreshing to see. Like some people they've just got it so wrong. Some people.
Yeah. Well, big shout out to the guys on the team rolling that out. So appreciate those kind words, man.
Yeah, are you doing all that in house or?
Yeah, all in house, like 100%. Like developed by, as Magnus mentioned, the Chad team. So yeah, let's just say like in general, like our designer is like ridiculously giga Chad, and like kind of helped to spearhead this whole movement. Like Magnus and I basically cooking up the lore together. We've thrown in we've sprinkled in a little bit of AI in there. So like if you come to our Discord, you'll see like a ton of the conversations that are being had are with some of the community members, like kind of discovering this AI basically. And it really is like a super cool experience. Like we've never personally had it in a Discord, and like it's great to see like what this has become like from a community standpoint. And we're just getting started, right? Like I think what's really cool, and I think what's going to be like really, really infectious, that not only like myself and Magnus have realized, but the team have realized as well, given the NFT space is still pretty obscure from a financialized side of things. There's a lot of things happening, but nevertheless, like there hasn't been a true protocol that's like really bridged the world of DeFi with the world of NFTs. We want DeFi participants, that are familiar with doing everything from, depositing their money on Yearn to borrowing on Compound, trading on Uniswap, or, depositing liquidity to Arrakis. It doesn't matter where you come from in DeFi. We want the experience with Protectorate Protocol to feel like it's a very high level DeFi product that just so happens to route liquidity for NFTs as well, right? So we didn't want it to be particularly siloed into, hey, this is the super great, cool niche NFT-fi space, because we don't feel like it's going to have as much reach like that. Like some people in DeFi don't really care for NFTs. They just simply want to generate yield, and that's totally cool. So we want to make a nice home for that sweet ETH and generate them even sweeter yield. So it really is just a very simple idea at its core. We're not reinventing the wheel, but just creating a really great experience, akin to like what NFTs have done for a lot of people, and applying it to DeFi.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the kind of initial? You said you hadn't announced the partner protocols yet, but what are some of the kind of existing yield opportunities in the NFT space or the NFT finance space that you guys will potentially be tapping into?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say like two of the most popular ways right now to generate yield on NFTs have been through like money markets, and secondly through like providing liquidity for the NFTs on AMMs like Caviar, Pseudo, Collection. So there's been a number of them, and it hasn't just been happening on ETH mainnet. It's happened on Solana as well, with Hades Swap, I believe is the name, and there's I think a number of others, but that's arguably the biggest.
As well.
Tensor is actually.
Tensor is good.
Yeah. That's a huge one as well. I don't know how I forgot that.
Tensor is really good. Like the first time I used it the other day to get some mad lads. Haven't they only got like a really, really small team compared to like Blur as well? And they're just
team is Chad.
They ship.
They're just
like,
churning shit out like every single day.
I remembered like our first call with them, like they just getting to know each other, and this was sort of like earlier stages of like mid to sort of like Q3, Q4 of last year, and before everything kind of collapsed with FTX. And we were talking with them, they were understanding what it is that we wanted to try and do, and we were actively exploring the Solana side. Not to say that we're not going to go there either, but like most of the liquidity is on ETH mainnet anyway. So, and that, sorry, long story short, it was kind of like you talk to them about a particular thing, and it's like, oh wait, give us a bit, and then next thing you know, you blink and it's rolled out. So it's like, wow, okay. So yeah, just agreeing with you, man.
Super impressive team.
Yeah, it's not the DeFi Llama team, is it? They seem to have that. They seem to have that mentality.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah, shit wars.
Yeah, so ETH and USDC will be initially able to be used to generate yield, but what's the hurdle to actually generate the yield off the back of like a specific collection itself, or is it just kind of a composability issue or collection issue or depth of liquidity issue on specific collections? Like how does that dynamic play out?
So initially people will only be able to deposit ETH, and then we'll look into stable options like rather soon. It really is just a matter of like partner protocols being able to kind of like support the stablecoin liquidity. And if they can't for now, then that's totally fine. But yeah, like that'll be the initial kind of like launch asset, if you will. So it'll be just ETH at launch. And then the idea as well is like, since it's just, a little bit of background as well. We intended to launch 2 capsules at first. The first capsule being the ETH capsule, second one being the NFT capsule. But quite recently we decided it's like we weren't going to do like a testnet phase or anything like that. We had like honestly, we've been like so blessed and lucky to have such a sick team like work on this and put this together properly. We felt it was actually ready to go to mainnet, given the simplicity of the structure. Like contracts are super simple. It's not anything that requires like a lot of a lot of overview from a let's get like tons of community feedback and get like analysis paralysis. That's what we felt would probably happen, right? So we felt like we were better poised to go to mainnet with a very, very simple product, simple like set and forget type of thing, and then build with a really strong foundation. So like with this really strong foundation, we can throw on more products on top that allow people, or users I should say, to get a lot more, different kinds of exposure to the NFT-fi space if they want. So for example, like this is just V0.1, given the ETH capsule launch. V1 actually looks like the NFT capsule as well, where users will be able to deposit their NFTs, and we will then take the NFTs and route the liquidity in whole. So not fractionalized at all, which is a new thing for the space, actually. We'll be able to take the entire NFT and be able to route that liquidity, if you will, to certain platforms, and be able to farm with any borrowed funds that we may pull from that NFT, and always do so in a safe way, where if the user, for whatever reason, withdraws, or say wants their asset back for whatever reason, they need to list their NFT or something like that, any sort of strategy that the capsule is running can be unwound very, very quickly and efficiently without kind of like shocking the rest of the system. So the idea was like, things can basically be directed in a way where, there's no bank run type of scenario, even if a platform itself was having a bank run, right? So that was the idea, like be able to kind of like reduce dependency however possible, but make sure that we are safe and that users' funds are safe, more than anything.
How does the withdrawal, and is there like a time delay? Is there like an epoch based? Like what does that look like for depositors if they, as you quite rightly said, if they need to remove for whatever reason?
Yeah, it'll be like a pool model, right? So the idea is if someone needs to withdraw, they totally can, and every other user's deposited funds is not going to be affected. If anything, that their yield might actually increase, given that it won't be diluted. So like on a per user basis, given that there's less of a split, yes, there may be less TVL, but that means more yield for our depositors. So some depositors might actually hope that, there's less deposits so that they can farm as much yield as possible. And
the usual thing.
The usual, yeah.
Don't share my pool. It's a catch-22, isn't it? Because you want to tell everyone about this great opportunity, but then you're like, shit, if I do tell everyone,
maybe not yet.
I dilute my yield, yeah.
Give me a few more days.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we have a really interesting incentive system that we've prepared, if you will, and it'll allow for like some really, really interesting like value capture for the far more crowd, depositors that simply just don't give a shit and they won't deposit and they won't generate their sweet ETH yield, and also at the like simultaneously giving a lot of really great value back to the protocol. So there's not like too much we can speak on it right now, but what the best way to put this would be is that we've been really inspired by Tapioca DAO and Timeless, and I think people can already gauge what those two names would already mean in terms of how we plan to, emit and reward certain actions with
that
PRTC
grin says it all.
Yeah, I'm a seed investor in Tapioca, so I know it all too well.
All right. so then you know the deal. Funny enough, like we have a shit ton of people from the Tapioca community in the Protectorate Discord. So a lot of them have like the Pearl NFT PFPs. So yeah, it's like really, really funny. Like I see like TWX, like names all the time. It's super funny. Great community.
They did really well. They did really, really well. I'm really impressed. What can you tell us about the event horizon, and like how much can we get into that just now, or do you want to hold back on that? Bearing in mind this will probably come out Thursday or Friday.
Yeah, no, that's perfect timing. So we plan to release the FAQ this week, so that's perfect timing, and I think it works perfectly because people will be able to read the FAQ and then hopefully watch this or get the notes or whatever it may be. But the event horizon is something I can't even put words as to how like we are excited for this, because it really is going to like test not test the market, but it's going to allow the market to basically dictate the price and the valuation of the protocol. So like for us, like we didn't want to be caught in a situation where we were just like, yeah, we're setting the price, and you see it like a down only style chart. We wanted to throw in some sort of like game theoretical element to the way that the event horizon was structured, allowing effectively the price to be up to the market, right? So like if the market says it's worth X, it's worth X. If it's not worth X, then it's not worth X. So that's totally fine. And the chart is kind of decided by the participants, not only in the event horizon, but also in the protocol launch. So yeah, it's going to be super sick. But to actually go into details, the event horizon is effectively like what we've talked about on Twitter, is the initial distribution of PRTC. So basically, it's going to be a Dutch auction. We're going to be putting up 5% of the PRTC supply for sale, and by we I mean Protectorate Protocol, and the eventual Protectorate DAO. And basically, if people have read the light paper already, like there's a supply that's hard capped at 100 million tokens. So this 5% of supply will basically be put up for sale through the event horizon. The event horizon will open for the first 48 hours to wardens only in the Discord, which basically acts as like a whitelist rule. So, like for example, we've taken a lot of experience, like a lot of our experiences as NFT traders, and doing everything from grinding in Discords, getting OG roles, which equal whitelist, and the complex structures of these NFT whitelists, right? And like also with DeFi, right? And basically created.
Is anyone gonna have to sing? Remember, like
no, nobody's gonna have to sing. Actually, the first day that we, it was so crazy. The first day we opened the Discord, it was a madhouse, and people were like actually trying to get into the voice chat. And
it's like, why is there no voice channel?
So that was so funny.
Protectorate karaoke. That's what you need to do. So.
The funny part is that if the keepers, which are like the mods, basically, like if they wanted to, they could have absolutely got people to chat in the Discord. Yeah. But we were just like, yo, please hold off. Like, don't do that. So that was epic. But yeah. So the idea is like, Warden is basically earned, right? So basically, like through some tweet threads, like we've seen a lot of people, granted Warden by the Watcher, which is our gatekeeper in the Discord, if you will, which is an AI powered bot. And it's basically, kind of like set up to detect certain things, right? It's detected as little as a server boost to as high as like a really detailed thread. So these people have basically been getting Warden, and we've built up quite a substantial list of participants in the sale, or in the event horizon, I should say. But total time in which the event horizon will be open for 72 hours. The first 48 will basically allow wardens to participate. So this allows the wardens collectively, right, to decide like what price they'd like to get PRTC at, and effectively set the market price. It gives them the opportunity to first set market price for the PRTC token prior to the last 24 hours, where if there is supply available and wardens don't kind of like, in the NFT world, they don't mint out, or in the DeFi world, that we don't sell out. The idea is like the public can then participate and then acquire PRTC as well as the price gradually falls given the Dutch auction. And for those that don't know what a Dutch auction is, basically price starts high and ends low, but at the end of the sale, everyone gets the same price.
So, how are the wardens effectively picked up by the contract at the LBP? Is it like a small NFT in the wallet that's picked up, so they know they're allowed to purchase the LBP?
It's basically a whitelist.
We're just collecting wallets, basically.
Basically, just collecting wallets. We plug them in, and then for that first 48 hours, that whitelist is in effect. So and then if there's supply after available, then like that whole whitelisting kind of phase would be removed, and then for the next 24 hours, literally anybody can participate, from your most degen NFT mentor, or the most sophisticated of funds. BlackRock could throw like $100 in there if they want. So yeah.
Protect ETF coming soon.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, soon. TM.
So is that final 24 hours on the same LBP? Then it's like it's not a separate curve or anything.
Yeah,
it'll be a declining, like decaying price, basically. Yeah.
Is it similar to the Miso contracts from Sushi? Is it, or?
Yeah. It's not them.
It's not that, but similar.
Is it similar to how Redacted did it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was going to say, that
was the most seamless participation of a TGE ever. I always tell founders just do that. It's the fairest way to do it. Nobody's fucking around waiting for like this random point in time where they have to be up and like everyone's getting pissed off. You've got 72 hours, decide your price, DC in if you want to do that. If you want to get in early, obviously get the warden roll. But It's
Yeah,
just so much
yeah.
easier. I don't know why everyone doesn't do it.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen like some pretty cool and like even like complex sale methods as well, that have had really interesting results. Honestly, it's kind of the craziest thing. Like collectively between Magnus and I, we literally have come into this with zero expectation. We've simply just poured like a lot of our, energy, if not all of it, and our hard work, and like as well as the team, like into making this thing a reality. So in all honesty, we're more jittery over like the capsule deployment to make sure that we have like an excellent product that people can, interact with, which will be first up, right? So like this week, likely by Wednesday at latest Friday, because we want to make sure everything is secure. We have an independent auditor wrapping up the audit for Protectorate Protocol and like a ton of peer reviews. So that's probably like what we're more like angst for, than even like the sale, or like the event horizon, right? Like that's just gonna, we're gonna hit the green button and then, just kind of like make sure the community's shepherded or steered in the right direction.
Is 100% of deposits always put to use? Or do you
The idea is that we
being
carry
that
some
way, or-
buffer, at least like likely 95.
We'll keep a reserve. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
to
that makes
absolutely make sure that there's zero risk of any sort of like bank run or anything like that, because we do, like, I think as we actually go live, it'll be another thing to study as well. If you're familiar with like the Elder Council setup, like at launch, the protocol won't have governance enacted yet, or maybe like at most 90 days after, when full governance and decentralization
Governance
will
light.
be enacted. Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah, but we will try to, like, we are endeavoring to try and decentralize like as like rapidly as humanly possible, like in the most responsible manner too. Yeah.
You guys are in a pretty unique position with that as well, because I think everyone understands that the vast majority of governance participation is a fraction of what it should be. But with your kind of gamified approach, I think there's a lot to be taken from that could incentivize governance participation. And if you seen what the Hashverse, like the Hashflow kind of NFT Hashverse guys are doing, so they've effectively built like a full on world that's going to have like allegiances, and but at the crux of it, it's to decentralize the protocol to encourage people to participate in governance. But I think you guys are in such a perfect position to be able to capitalize on however you want to do that. But it's a vastly underserved market, and even just getting participation up is a tricky one, I think, for a lot of protocols.
Yeah, because we've rolled out, like, it's funny you mentioned that, because like we've rolled out like factions and stuff within the server as well. So it's kind of like subgroups, right? So at the present moment, it's like just a lot of friendly banter between the three.
Until shit goes down and they'll try to kill each other.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of like,
sometimes unfriendly.
Sometimes not so friendly, but it's all good. But I mean, the idea is like if we can gamify it more and at least have some sort of mechanism in which you participate, you can get something out of it. So we're kind of writing the playbook as we go along. Not saying but everyone within the space, and hopefully it's something that's, I don't know, beneficial that other people may want to follow suit as well.
Can you get into the factions and credits a little bit more, or is there anything else to unpack there?
So basically, and we'll go like full lore mode, right? Like as the community is making its way towards capsule deployment this week, and the rest of the Protectorate is, marching towards this event horizon that's been quote unquote discovered. Like the idea is that the Watcher, which is our gatekeeper, as I mentioned, has basically uncovered and deciphered code from all these factions, right? And the factions are as follows, right? So there's Protecc, which if any Altered Carbon fans are watching this, may sound exactly, a CTAC variant, right? Like, so we, instead of the Colonial Tactical Assault Corps, it's called Protectorate Tactical Assault Corps. And basically, we've allowed the community to basically give meaning to these different factions, right? So we haven't stated like what any of them mean or do or anything like that. It's been really interesting to see like how people have identified like this faction does this faction does that. So the Meths, which is the next group, which also you may be kind of like ringing a bell from Altered Carbon, are like the agents of the Protectorate. You know, like they've been around for ages. They've, you know, been watching and doing their thing, you know. And then we have the Nomads, lastly, which are basically like the wanderers of the Protectorate. You know, some people may look at themselves as like nomads in crypto, wandering between NFTs and DeFi and whatever the fuck else. So, you know, we feel like we've kind of created like these super interesting sub communities that the Watcher has identified, quote unquote, right? And the currency of the Protectorate, so within the server, and, you know, maybe wink wink for other things, are credits, right? And you'll again see this in Altered Carbon. But basically we have, you know, a way in the server, like an off-topic channel for people to kind of like work and earn their daily bread, if you will. So people are stacking the credits, and yeah, you know, maybe the Watcher discovers something that they're used for.
Yeah, maybe you can use those credits for something eventually.
Yeah.
Reading between the lines there, folks.
Yeah.
Is there any collections that you'd love to see on there eventually once you get kind of 1.0 up and running? Is there any collections that I should be paying attention to if you guys have kind of got eyes on the ground in the space? Because every single time I buy an NFT, it fucking sends it to Hades.
To zero,
so.
Right? Dude, it's funny. Like, we've been talking about this for a while, right? Like, we've become hyper bearish on collections that don't prioritize liquidity for their collectors.
Makes sense.
It's a really slippery road, right? Because in DeFi, at least, like, there's been a lot of learnings, like from the ICO days of like 2017, 18 to like now. You know, people will reserve certain amounts of their supply for like liquidity mining related stuff, or like actual liquidity provisioning. POL is like a huge thing, obviously.
Yeah, why isn't that a thing?
Yeah, I mean, the good news is like now it is a thing. So, for example, like, just not a shill necessarily, but just to give some credit where credit's due, there's been an interesting kind of uptick in this in the space. One of the collections doing it is Sappy Seals, right? So like, it's really interesting to see like how they put a thread out actually a few months back saying that they've earned like somewhat like 50 ETH, I think, from just providing liquidity for the collection on Pseudo natively, right? Like from their own supply. And they likely got the ETH from, I don't know, I'm going to go out on a whim and guess here, royalties. So it was almost like free liquidity provisioning that they made 50 ETH off, right? It's kind of crazy. They minted these NFTs out of thin air. The market priced them, so it's free for them, besides the amount of money they paid for the artist. They likely made the liquidity that they provided in ETH prior to, with royalties, right? So they provided that for free because that was a trading fee, basically, right? Like the royalty. And then now they're making actual like realized 50 ETH plus more now, I'm sure, profits. So some other collections are doing this as well. Like Familiars is doing it on Caviar. The Honey Jar is doing it as well on Caviar Pseudo Swap. So yeah, there's been a number of them that have been engaging in this. Now, does it necessarily correlate with price? Absolutely not. But what's really helpful is that it's, again, like, goes back to this vision that we had like a little bit over a year now of like flipping the illiquid JPEG meme on its head. It's like, it's no longer can you say that JPEGs are totally liquid. You know, yeah, they may not be as liquid as fucking Maker ETH pair, you know, headed to zero, but like, you know, yeah, right. Like, we all follow the damn tweets. So like,
they're just gonna make a new token, aren't they?
Yeah, honestly, I mean, like, fresh chart syndrome is definitely like,
yeah, real. Fuck it, that didn't work. Let's do another token.
Yeah, let's do another one. Let's just reset it.
1-to-1 token swap, call it MRK, you know, like, that's it. So yeah, like, basically the idea is, I think going into 2023, like the rest of 2023, going into 2024 and beyond, it's like, at least on a personal level, because this is obviously not going to be advice to anybody, but just following where collections are pioneering into the NFT space is probably one of the biggest signals, versus collections that are steering away from it. So, for example, like Pseudo has just released V2 that allows for like royalty support. Caviar has supported royalty since day one. So in other words, the infrastructure is there for collections to start providing liquidity now. So there's no excuse, the excuse before was understandable. Hey, we're going to block off, certain AMMs. You cannot trade on them anymore. And even we've run into this issue as like very early LPs. Like we've run into the issue of like certain collections being blocked, which doesn't help the collection overall. Actually, like we noticed over the time that collections did block the AMMs in terms of like liquidity being provided there. They noted there was a significant downtrend in price. So it was weird to see, but again, it just reinforces the thesis that less liquidity for NFTs obviously increases the volatility. And if you have, which typically is the case, a small group of very large holders, it's essentially like nearly like with prophetic accuracy will you see like a very sharp downtrend in price. So yeah, I mean it's pretty crazy.
What so for those, let's say there's an NFT project and they're not very technical, but they do realize that that's the right thing to go ahead and do that. Is that something that you guys would be happy to kind of help facilitate with kind of looking after and optimizing those positions on, like, say, Caviar or Pseudos? Is that something that you guys would be happy to help out with, or does that fall under the remit of Protecc? Or
Protecc Labs is basically, like Magnus said, like an NFT focused market maker. So we're open to basically working with any NFT collection that we feel is a good fit. And so that's the short answer, but I'll pass it back to you, Magnus.
Yeah, no, ultimately it's like, from the perspectives of like being able to sort of like have like a increased depth of liquidity, you want to curb the volatility, reduce spreads, all that sort of good stuff when it comes to market making and everything. The not so fun thing side of like, NFTs or financial jargon, then, you talk to Protecc Labs. Because ultimately the way that we see it, like taking this sort of like two-pronged approach, if we can somehow make like these JPEGs less, like more liquid, then it becomes more of a like legitimate like asset class. And then, beyond just like the conceptualization of like RWAs and everything, people can maybe start thinking about tokenizing even more things. So I guess it's like, that's the long-term outlook of kind of like why we want to try and do it and why we believe it's like a pretty interesting and intriguing sort of market opportunity,
Well, you see in every protocol that's in the right minds, like partnering up with Arrakis now with UniV3 and realizing that's obviously a great model to go down. They can just hand it over, recuperate the fee, pay the fee to Arrakis, and then away they go. Everyone's happy. It's a win-win-win situation. So, is that like end game shit for you guys, or?
Well, like Protecc Labs is
go.
Sorry, Protecc Labs is probably more akin to like a larger market maker that you may see like in the crypto space that does like full on fucking percentage points of like daily crypto turnover in terms of volume. So that's where you can kind of like compare Protecc Labs to. And then like with Protectorate Protocol, the end game there is more so like it becomes ideally fully decentralized or as governance or as like governance focused as possible, with like as little as possible Protecc Labs contribution. Like Protecc Labs basically, was the team that incubated it and just kind of like, let it fly out of the nest, if you will. But the idea is that it finds contributors that will continue to develop and push the agenda for Protectorate Protocol, maintain and develop the code base, maintain and develop the community. So that's basically the idea. We feel like we've put like all the right steps in place to do that. It is a unique approach. We haven't seen anybody that's kind of come off as like a software development company or like market maker or whatever, have like a core primary business and be able to have like another arm that they're developing in the sense of like a tokenized protocol. So like Magnus and I, we knew that it was a lot to bite off, but never once in this process did we feel like it was more than we could chew. We've been really lucky to have like such a great
so far.
Yeah, so far, right? We've had such a great team that's been so receptive to the idea. I honestly, I don't even know how it's happened. Like it's got to be like right time, right place type of thing. But yeah, like the idea is, when you can get this many people together. Like 80% of our team has worked together on previous projects, by the way. So it's not like this is all our first go around at everything. We feel like a lot of pitfalls sometimes is like the fact that teams may be working together for the first time. So we're experienced. We've done a lot of cool shit together. We've made, like, I don't want to blow smoke up our ass, but like we've made history in certain respects of the space, and we want to do the same thing in NFT finance.
Yeah, I mean, we may as well, like, the aims for it end game wise is like a lot of the DNA that you've seen at Redacted too, that a lot of people love in terms of like the degeneracy with the incentivization. Let's just call it straight up, like the bribe markets. You know, with at least Protectorate too, like when we're not really seeing that anyone's sort of like, I'm sure people have thought about it. It's not anything new, but convexing a lot of these different tokens, anything that we see is productive. So it's kind of like a powerhouse. And like, you know, given our close ties with all the crew that's back at Redacted too, because we still talk with all the guys, it's like, you know, there may just be a bribe market on there at some time for some sort of NFT at some sort of, you know, liquidity incentivization down the line too. But, you know, that's like, we're taking it one step at a time anyway, but, you know, without kind of like talking about everything and anything. So yeah, just sort of drop in that little spoiler too.
There's something that we say to some like community members and like friends of ours that are just getting acclimated to the space, if you will. And it's like, we'll just drop it here because fuck it. And I think a lot of people will get like this mindgasm hearing it. So it's like, okay, you have in DeFi, right, these protocols that basically fight for territory in terms of and liquidity, right? So you have obviously like a very active and robust bribe market now, like especially with Redacted's hidden hand. It's made that process all the more simpler. So can you imagine when this happens? No fucking clue. But are we shipping things to make that happen? Absolutely. So can you imagine a world where the NFT space has enough and robust enough financial infrastructure where you have collections that actively seek deeper liquidity for their collections on chain, right? Where they trade, obviously. So much so that they actually turn into these bribe markets or like incentivization markets, however people know them as and want to call them, and effectively begin using some of their war chests to actually bribe for deeper liquidity. Like, what does that actually look like? Like NFTs become like a super asset pretty much at that point because they are super and deeply liquid on chain, right? They have the cultural phenomena behind it. They have the cultural tailwind, right? And they have this insane amount of like composability with things outside of, the internet culture, right? Like real world assets. So that's like end game thought. How long does that take? Who knows? Maybe 2026 we see something like that. Like, it's not a prediction. It's more like we don't necessarily know when it happens because nobody could have timed anything that's happened in DeFi or in NFTs or even fucking Pepe, to say the least. Right? Yeah. Like, that shit was crazy. So
yeah, your favorite coin.
Yeah.
Does it also help that kind of end game idea that if I was a betting man, which I am, I'd probably foresee a lot of NFT projects tokenizing as well. So just adds that extra layer of
God.
kind of
that's huge. I mean, can you imagine look, if Bored Apes did it, every collection, it's not that every collection should do it, but it's just like it is.
They definitely will.
I mean, like, as an NFT collection,
and then they'll all have an L2.
Yeah, I mean, like, think about it. Like, it's another way. Like, think about it, right? Like, if royalty volume dries up, like, how are you going to raise capital, right? Because you like, as a company, because I'm assuming these NFT projects, like, they actually, like, assuming that they actually have a proper structure, there's a company that develops it and whatever. Like, as a company, how are you going to show that you're profitable to potential investors and stuff like that? Like, the token is pretty much just like people in DeFi, right? Like, the token is pretty much the way in to these like circles because they want that ridiculous unlimited upside. There's great financial infrastructure for the tokens, right? Like, between centralized exchanges, between AMMs, money markets, etc. Like, there's so much to do, right? And that the idea is like, we go back to the question of like what kind of upside is there in NFT finance? That shit is just starting to exist. It's like a year old. versus like in DeFi, it's multiple years old now, which again sounds like a lot in this space. But in other words, that's like from an upside comps perspective, like that's one other reason a lot of VCs are starting to look at the space. They're starting to add it into their theses. So that's another thing to pay attention to as well. Like, paradigm flipping to like AI related stuff. Like a lot of VCs are flipping to NFT-fi related investments. A lot of investment DAOs are looking at it as well. So like there's a lot of speculation around the space. So people are placing their bets, if you will, and like just like you, like I think a lot of people can relate in terms of like being betters, and like that's what it's all about, right? Like when you see VCs taking aim at the space, it's another signal. Is it the best signal? Who knows? Time will tell. But yeah, it's the good news is like they are taking aim, and like we've been really lucky as well. Like we've had, honestly, at this point, hundreds of conversations, and that's not exaggerating. Like we spent 9 months raising from beginning to end.
What a grueling process.
Yeah, I mean, insane. So like being 14 to 15 hours apart and spending like pretty much day in, day out raising. We've had like a ton of different conversations with VCs, and we've seen a lot of different standpoints. We're no means experts on the VC environment, but it's clear based on the way some projects have been able to raise as well that they are here, and there is capital to raise. There is capital for NFT projects that are or NFT-fi projects that are looking to solve these issues. So
hope you didn't lose too many brain cells in speaking to hundreds of hours.
Oh my God! I mean, we got down to our last few. That's for sure.
I didn't have much to spare anyway, so yeah.
Oh my God. No,
I bet there was some beauty. I bet there was some beauty questions that came back.
Oh man, there was some good ones. We can talk about them over a drink sometime.
Yeah.
Gents, is there anything else you might have missed that you want to wrap it up with, or?
Oh man,
I think can you state the dates as well? Just because this goes out in a couple of days. We're recording on the 19th, so
yes.
If there's any specific dates, and just to capture that, I think.
Mm-hmm. So the planned launch date for the capsule deployment is the 21st, so in 2 days from today. So that's a Wednesday. Latest the 23rd, given like audit timelines as well. But right now we're still fully on schedule for the event horizon, which is the 28th, which will be next Wednesday. So that will be open for 72 hours, closing, when would that be? That would be Saturday morning, I believe, first thing. So yeah, that's pretty much it. It's going to be a good time.
We'll get this out before then. So if you're listening now, I'll leave the link in the description so you can go ahead there. But thanks very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. This was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, man.
Anytime, just if you want to kind of run it back or you pushing out new product and stuff, just let us know.
Yeah, no worries.
100%.
Always good to catch up, man.
Blockmates listeners get the alpha first.
Too right. All right, gents, thanks very much. And everyone else, I'll see you next time.